Hi everyone, welcome back to Steam Flow. Today we're checking out a game called Dark Envoy on the Steam Deck OLED. This is a tactical RPG that blends guns and sorcery, and while its Steam Deck verified, performance isn't quite as smooth as you might expect. I've got FPS numbers, battery life results, and we're also going to look into using lossless scaling for this game, so without further ado, let's break it all down. Now, if you're not familiar, Dark Envoy is a party-based RPG game from developer called Event Horizon. You start the game with two characters that are siblings called Malachi and Kiowa, and explore a steampunk/fantasy world where you can recruit allies, customize classes, and fight in real-time combat that can be paused and slowed down to a tactical screen, sort of like Baldur's Gate, but the combat is real-time and it's not turn-based. I'm going to jump straight into performance, and here's the reality of it. On the lowest settings, the game usually runs between 30 and 45 FPS, but it can drop very hard when effects stack up. In some fights with 3 or 4 or more enemies, I've seen dips below 15 FPS, which makes things a little bit choppy. That leads me to believe that developers are targeting 30 FPS as the baseline for the game being verified on the Steam Deck, and at 30 the game does feel stable enough to enjoy. In terms of pacing, it is very slow, even if it's not turn-based. 30 FPS is still good enough to enjoy. Now, I also tried lossless scaling. If you use lossless scaling 3 times, you can actually lock it at 60 FPS, and characters are small enough that artifacting is barely visible and there is no noticeable input lag. The only place you see issues is around the text. Sometimes it looks fuzzy, but since the characters are not really moving fast enough for the screen to change, it's not distracting unless you're looking at it closely. Most of the time I didn't notice it. I had to really look for it because I know usually around text there's going to be artifacting with lossless scaling. So if you prefer smoothness, 60 FPS with lossless scaling feels pretty great. If you'd rather keep things simple, 30 FPS capped is still a perfectly fine way to play. As for the settings, I wouldn't recommend going above low. Medium can hold around 30 FPS most of the time, but you hit stutters and drops as soon as you enter combat, so it's really not worth it. Now at 30 FPS on low settings, battery life on the OLED deck is about 3 hours and 45 minutes. If you try to push higher FPS or go up to medium, you can expect shorter playtime around 3 hours and more instability, as I said earlier. For all sessions, I think 30 FPS locked is just the best choice. Now onto controls in UI. The good news is that Dark Envoy has full controller support and it works well on the deck. You can't really remap the buttons, that's a bummer, but the default layout is intuitive and easy to use. There's button prompts all over the place, so you really won't have an issue using a controller. There is also UI scaling supported. Now lately, all of the games I've been testing on the Steam Deck have UI scaling, which helps a lot on the smaller screen. So this is really nice to see that developers are starting to adopt this kind of thing. Navigating menus, swapping items, and selecting abilities is smooth. Even if the interface isn't designed for handheld first, overall I think it's very playable and I didn't have any issues. So in conclusion, you can expect between 30 and 45 FPS on low, with dips during heavy effects. Lossless scaling gets you to a clean 60 FPS with only minor artifacting, and battery life is just under 4 hours at 30 FPS capped. The slower tactical pace means you don't need high frame rates, so I recommend locking it at 30 for stability. That's it for my testing of Dark Envoy on the Steam Deck. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to check out my Steam Curator page where I post quick reviews and recommendations for every game I test. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.